So today we're going to talk about the atom and all of its parts. Yesterday we talked about just basic structure of the atom, and today we're going to go over that in more detail. Okay, so first we are going to talk about protons. So if you will label your box up here, protons, you will notice that it is pointing to this subparticle right here that has a positive charge, so that tells us that it is the proton. Protons do have a positive charge. Protons also give an identity to the atom. When we did our atom builder program, every time we added a proton, you should have noticed that the name of the element changed. So protons do give identity. The mass of a proton is equal to 1 AMU, which stands for atomic mass unit. Protons contribute to charge. And yesterday in our atom builder program, we learned that protons were also equal to the atomic number, and we learned that protons were equal to the number of electrons that an atom has. So we can say that A is equal to P is equal to E. And that just means the atomic number is equal to the number of protons, which is equal to the number of electrons. Okay, so this is all the information that we need to have about protons. Now we are going to talk about the electron rings, which is just this next box right here. It's pointing to my electron rings. The rings are also known as the electron clouds, so you might see it referred to that as well. So we have our electron rings. And we know that our electron rings surround our nucleus. And we know that the electron ring holds our electrons. Since electrons carry a negative charge and it's the only particle that is on the rings, we know that our electron rings carry an overall charge that is negative. And then I'm going to put this in a different color, this next fact, because it is something that we're going to talk about when we move on to discussing the periodic table. But I do want you to have it in your notes right now. So, periods on the periodic table, and I'm just going to abbreviate it for PT, standing for periodic table, tell us how many rings an atom has. So for example, periods on a periodic table go across, and so if a element is in period 1 and I draw that element, I know that it's going to have 1 ring. If an element is in period 2 going across on the periodic table, when I draw it, I know that it will have 2 rings. Okay? So that's everything that we need to know about the electron rings. Now we are going to discuss the nucleus. Okay, so our nucleus is located in the middle of an atom. So it's centrally located. We also know that the majority of the mass is going to be located in the nucleus because protons and neutrons are contributing to mass. So all of the mass is in the nucleus. And in parentheses, I'm just going to put protons plus neutrons. We know that electrons do have mass. However, the mass of an electron is so insignificant that it is not really contributing to the overall mass of an atom. Okay? So the majority of the mass is going to be right here in the nucleus. And because the only particle that is charged in the nucleus is the proton, and the proton is positive, we say that the overall charge of our nucleus is positive. So now we're going to move to the other side. And you'll notice we have an electron here that we're going to label. And we also have an electron down here that we're going to label. We're going to do this electron last. It is a special type of electron that we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about it more when we get to the periodic table. But I do want you to take some notes on it today. Okay? So let's first start with a regular electron. Okay, so we've got our electron. And we know that electrons are negative. Okay? So they have a negative charge. We also said over here that electrons' mass is very insignificant. It's very small. So we say that mass is much smaller than 1 AMU. Okay. We also know the location of our electrons. They orbit the nucleus on the electron rings. And I'll put this in green so you can see it. We're going to write this same fact up here. I know that electrons are equal to the number of protons, which is also equal to the atomic number. So A is equal to P is equal to E. Okay, so we've talked about protons and we've talked about electrons. So our last subatomic particle that we're going to talk about today is the neutron. We know that neutrons are neutral, which means that they have no charge. And an easy way to remember that is by looking at the two words neutral and neutron. They both actually start out with the same 5 letters, okay? So when you think about neutron, think about its first 5 letters, and that will tell you what its charge is, which is neutral. Okay? In addition to having no charge, neutrons do contribute to mass. And it has a mass equal to 1 AMU. So the mass of a neutron is the exact same as the mass of a proton. So when I'm finding mass, I do protons plus neutrons equals mass. All right, so now we're going to talk about this electron down here. This electron is known as a valence electron, and I'm actually going to do it in red because we'll talk about valence electrons when we move on to the periodic table. But this is what's called a valence electron. And valence electrons happen to be all of the electrons that are on the last ring of an atom. So this particular atom only has 1 valence electron. However, it could have up to 8 valence electrons. Okay, so valence electrons are all let me try that again. keeps moving on me, so I'll try and write a little bit slower. It is all of the electrons on the last ring. Valence electrons also determine an atom's reactivity as well as an atom's chemical properties. Okay, so determines reactivity and it helps identify chemical properties. Okay, the last thing that I'm going to tell you about valence electrons, I'm going to write in green right here, and that is that our periodic table is actually grouped by how many valence electrons an atom has. So all of the atoms in group 1, which goes down, has 1 valence electron. All of the atoms in group 2 have 2 valence electrons, and we'll go all the way across the periodic table with that. So the periodic table is grouped by valence electrons. So here is your note page on all of the different parts of the atom. All right. So what I want you to do is you're going to copy this on your paper that looks just like what we just went over. Okay, and you're going to keep this in your binder under section 2, which is atoms. If you have any questions, please let your teacher know.